Unipro International, Denali Atlantic Cattle, Brent Camper, Whitehall Cattle Company, Golden West Radio, Marshland Feeds, got to read my own handwriting here, Rosenthal Farm and Ranch, Glendale Ranch, Maple Cooley Ranch, Solio Ag, and of course Enpro. So make sure you track down, there's most representatives from those companies that are around here, so make sure you track them down and tell them thank you for their sponsorship and making this conference a reality, essentially. We're going to start off today with Dr. Ted Dupmeier. He's been a vet longer than I've been alive, so he's got some vital information to share with us. He's got 50 plus years of experience in large animal and poultry vet. He's mainly been in Saskatchewan, but he did a stint in Britain. He was called back for foot and mouth disease. He was called back for foot and mouth disease. He also did a stint in Mongolia, the fall of 2014. And for the past 10 years, he's been heavily involved in glyphosate and researching the toxicity issues in animals. He's had many students over the years, and I look forward to his presentation here.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you for everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. And it's my first point to make it known that this is not a hate glyphosate meeting. It's an information meeting, and we hope that we can give you some things to go home and think about. And my presentation's going to be just a bit about some of the signs we see in livestock, and if this happens to work, we'll be in really good shape. There we go. And so this is what I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to talk to you about the products have to be utilized appropriately. Glyphosate is the first one that's going to probably shake your head. Is a very strong registered antibiotic. One of the strongest antibiotics registered to mankind. And I'll talk to you a bit more about that. And as a veterinarian, if I look at a problem and I say, none of this makes sense to me, there's been a lot of those problems, but we won't get into that. But if it's something that I can't understand, now I start to think about toxicity, and many times it will be glyphosate that's involved. To give an example, we're going to start with the fly tag fiasco. Anybody that's probably under 40, this is brand new information to you. Us older people, we've seen the thing with fly tags. Fly tags were the greatest invention. You could put those fly tags in the calves' ears, you could put them in the cows' ears. You'd see those bulls out in the pasture, there wouldn't be a fly on their back. It was incredible. And so as veterinarians, it was a moneymaker. We could sell fly tags like crazy, and it helped the producers, so it was a really good deal. You were supposed to put the fly tags in after the fly season started. So you wouldn't really be doing it yet. You'd probably put the fly tags in near the end of June. The other rule that was very strict was if you were to take the fly tags out before the season ended. And the reason for this is that the resistant flies would be picked up at either end of this scheme. And so you can imagine that putting these tags in later in the year and taking them out in the middle of August was just about as handy as having a hip pocket on your long johns, because it just didn't happen. And it wasn't the producer's fault. I stand as much at fault as anybody with that. So what happened? The tags were put in when the calves were processed to brandy. Right, that makes good sense. And the tags were removed late in the fall, if it happened. And there was severe resistance. These flies, in fact, it was so bad that we have people that would come in the clinic and they'd say, I think those tags are attracting the flies. And I agree with them. And then it got so bad, we put a big sign in the clinic. If you have trouble with fly tags, don't talk to us, here's the company. There. I'm just using that as an example. The other thing about glyphosate, and you know, you've all handled fire, and so fire is a pretty handy thing, but if you don't follow the rules with it, you get into some trouble. Same thing with glyphosate. May be handy, but you can get burnt with it. And so you have to use these things appropriately. This is the one that I really want people to keep in their mind. It is a patented broad-spectrum antibiotic. It's going to explain most of the problems we see in livestock with it, and the soils people, I'll let them talk about that. It has a U.S. patent. You can check the patent on your internet that glyphosate is an antibiotic. And it was registered in 2010. So now you think about it. You've no doubt read that we're supposed to start having safe use of antibiotics. Doesn't make sense to me, but anyway, I'll leave that with you. Glyphosate is a really potent antibiotic. It's a tough fellow. And it's an important factor. With any antibiotics, some bacteria are really sensitive, some bacteria aren't as sensitive. And so what it does is it kills off the least sensitive to start with, and then as the number or the amount of glyphosate goes up, you see more of a problem. So you can start to see where these problems are going to go. And this next one is something to keep in your mind. It screws up the bacteria in your gut. I didn't mean your gut, I meant in the cow's gut. But you think about this one. And so it also kills the helpful bacteria. Animals have helpful bacteria in their gut, and they have some bacteria that really aren't very good. And when they get going, then you've got a problem. First example I'm going to talk about is Clostridials. And as we start to talk about this with the antibiotics, many people in this room have had a little bit of experience with bloat or in cattle, and a little bit of experience with sudden death in cattle, and grain overloads. Now, most of the time, if I've been involved or we've been talking about it, I'm talking about bacterial screw-up causing this bloat or these sudden deaths or this grain overload because it can't digest the grain. And so now you start thinking about putting an antibiotic into that animal's gut and screwing up that microbiome. And so now you've got a problem. The worst grain overload situation I ever seen was a group of cattle that were on 5 pounds of barley, had been on 5 pounds of barley for quite a length of time, and suddenly had a tremendous grain overload outbreak. One that we couldn't save the animals, they just died. And when we got it all solved, it was because they were eating the flax that was used for bedding. And they ate this flax like they had pica. Like they would just go after it like crazy because they like the salt. And the owner is the guy that solved it many times. As you know, we're just partners with you to solve problems. And he suddenly realized that that's what he had done. He had double sprayed that flax, and now he was using it for bedding because he had to double spray to be able to cut it. And end of story. That's how much trouble it can cause. So anyway, glyphosate removes the competitors to Clostridials. Clostridials are in your gut, they're no, and Clostridium difficile, if people have ever ran into that problem, it's because of over-medication, and I don't have to explain that to you. But anyway, when the competitors to glyphosate or to Clostridials are kind of wiped out, remember they're a little bit more sensitive, then the Clostridials say, oh boy, I'm into gear, I can take over this thing. And so then they proliferate, and then we will see various toxicities, sometimes sudden death, but we see a very particular syndrome And I'm going to show you a video. We might end up seeing it 10 times before I get it moved on, but we'll go through that. But I want you to keep this video in mind. And it is chronic botulism. And I just have to get over here. The thing that's important here is whether the machine works. I'll get her going. Oh, I need the helper guy. Addison, thank you. There you go. Oh man, no problem. Thing that's important here, you've seen cattle doing this, but look at the intensity of this cow. And this is because of chronic botulism. She's slapping that water up, trying to get enough water, but she's not drinking much water. And we will see this get to such an intensity that people will have to, now we're going the wrong direction. Addison, and there we go. Now it's going backwards. But anyway, we'll go back to talk about that video. You'll certainly remember that video because of I know it's going wrong. And the intensity of that cow, and we have had herds. Yeah, perfect. The intensity that cow is slapping that water. We actually had a dairy that had to put a wall up because they were sloshing so much water out that they were flooding the alleyway for the cows. 2 weeks after the glyphosate was out of their ration, they see no more of that. Now you will see that. Every once in a while you see a calf in a feed lot or another animal lapping water. But they're bored, but they're only going to do it for a couple seconds. But if you see this intensity, you got a problem. As I said, glyphosate is a very potent antibiotic, and the speakers that are going to follow me are going to tell you all about how they tie up other essential minerals and really screw up rations for people. And glyphosate usually causes insidious problems. You just get a little bit of a problem going on, a little bit of bloat, then you get some animals dying. And the third thing on that line is that most things like pneumonia or scholars or those kind of things that we treat take a fair bit of time to see recovery. Glyphosate removal from the feed is almost instantaneous. I would never promise you that, but that's what seems to happen. It amazes me every time I see it. Next example, non-alcoholic fatty liver syndrome. Some of you may have a neighbor that you've seen early in the morning that kind of has this glassy eye look. And it wouldn't have happened to you, but it would be your neighbor. And he has this glassy eye look. And that's what these animals will look like with the fatty liver. And of course, you have chicken because there, can't tell if chicken got a glassy eye. But then this part is where the pathology that's going on is that those bacteria in the gut are screwed up, and so they're not digesting, so they start to starve. Same as a real serious fatty liver alcoholic. And so these animals start to get this kind of shriveled up look, this glassy eye look. And it's the most common in calves. We'll see it in baby calves, calves that are just born, very serious. We'll see it in lambs, we'll see it in dairy cows, and we'll see it in poultry. Nothing like poultry, because a poultry barn that's producing eggs at 95%, all of a sudden get a new load of feed and their production will be down at 82%. And they get the glyphosate out, and within 2 weeks, those chickens will be back up to 95. Incredible, but they'll have these livers. I'm going to show you some livers here There's two of them. Well, if I get this going the right direction, Madison, you got this figured out. Which way are we going to get it at? Thank you. I can even figure it out. Yeah, great. Thanks, Madison. So this liver, keep that one in mind. That's a normal liver. You see a liver like that in the grocery store, probably eat it. You like liver. And the next one is this one. This liver, if you see it in the grocery store, don't eat it. And so that is a liver from an animal with glyphosate toxicity. That animal and the rest of the group in there, when we remove the glyphosate, the rest of them live very well. This one, of course, is dead. But you'll see all these kind of holes in that liver. And what that is ash from the animal that's starving, burns the fat off, and that ash goes into the liver. And so then the liver gets into this situation. And when you have this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, there's some ways to turn it around, but you're in big trouble. And so, last example, which is probably making the point to you, horses are very susceptible to this situation. And horses, because they have so much gut, and that big gut has to have, they only digest by bacterial action. And so you can imagine what happens if you screw up the gut and in a horse. And so you know how you feel if you got indigestion. Sometimes you're a little grumpy, sometimes you're kind of giving the better part of your household a little trouble. You're just a grump. And that's how horses feel with that. And so we've had dramatic changes in the nature of horses by changing the ration and getting the glyphosate out of there. And there's a horse gut, and that will give you a bit of an idea how much gut has got bacteria acting in that horse. And when it's not right, he's got a gut ache. And then we have the super thing that everybody's talking about, ulcers in their horses. We used to never see ulcers in horses. There's some really quite expensive medicine, and don't knock it, it's a good deal. But expensive medicine for treating ulcers, for getting rid of glyphosate, you generally get rid of the ulcer. And so I'm just going to read you a note that a lady sent to me. I haven't looked at her horses in the last while, I'm making that really clear. But she sent to me when I had told her about the seminar, because she couldn't come, she's quite away from here. And she said, yeah, I would sure like to be there. My horse has had some very soft manure for several years. He was on a Washington Timothy grass and a few other little things. She said several months ago, I switched him onto an Alberta Timothy that I knew for sure had no glyphosate on it. And now I don't have to wash his butt end. I don't have to clean behind the horse. He's back to being a normal horse. And she said, I mentioned it to my neighbor, and my neighbor said, the lady said, yeah, she made the change in her horse. She has a stable. And she said, I've seen exactly the same change. So, point made is that if that microbiome or the gut gets changed, you got a problem. And if we're lucky, we'll get off of that one. So, everything that I have told you has been written up in a book. I was fortunate enough by Dr. Huber, who's going to talk to you next, to be invited to write a chapter in a book. And he has the book for sale, of course, and I was fortunate enough to be in it. And I have to make sure that everybody understands that anything I've said so far is in that book, because right now I'm my membership in the Vet Association is suspended. Maybe a bit of a relationship to what I'm doing right now. but I had all this done beforehand, and so I'm not a member or using my membership. But don't worry about that one. But with this, I hope I gave you a couple of points about glyphosate to think about what goes on with animals. We see it in chickens, we see it in pigs, we see it in lambs, and anytime you got a weird problem, you're trying to figure out what it is, you're working with your veterinarian, give a thought to toxicities, not just glyphosate, other ones you can too. Any questions? I'll take them at the end. So we're going to get on to Dawn now. Thank you.